be starting on page 4 of your Haggadah with the lighting of the Yom Tov candles. Because it is not Yom Tov right over here, you're going to go ahead and light the candles, and I'll lead you in the blessing. I'm going to give you a minute to light the candles. This is sort of Dora the Explorer style, so I'm going to go ahead and let you light the candles. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Yom Tov. Order of the Seder you can find on your supplementary music sheet. Number 1. Kadesh uchatz karpas yachatz magid rachatza motzi matzah maror korech shulchan orech tzafun marech Kadesh begins with the blessing over the wine or the juice. So if you'll lift up your glasses for the first blessing. We thank you, God, for giving us the gift of the festivals for joy and holidays for happiness. Among them is the day of Passover, the festival of our liberation, the day of sacred assembly, recalling the Exodus from Egypt. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei puri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol am ורוממנו מכל לשון וקידשנו במצוותיו ותיתן לנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה מועדים לשמחה חגים וזמנים לששון את יום החג המצות הזה זמן חירותנו מקרא קודש זכר ליציאת מצרים כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים ומועדי קודשך בשמחה ובששון הנחלתנו ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש ישראל והזמנים. And together we're going to say the Shehecheyanu.
Baruch
Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who has kept us in life, sustained us, and enabled us to reach this season. The first glass of wine or juice is drunk, and the cup is refilled. Take a moment on your Seder plate. You should have 2 pieces of greenery. The first one is parsley, karpas, and the other one is chazeret. I used basil, strong smelling. You could use spinach, you could use lettuce, you could use something of that. Karpas is when we're gonna dip it in our salt water. Yum, yum, yum. So parsley or any other vegetable such as celery or potato or basil or spinach is when we're gonna dip it in the salt water and we're gonna eat it. The parsley symbolizes both the humble origins of the Jewish people as well as the rebirth of spring, which is starting now. In Eastern Europe, where green vegetables were not common, a potato was used instead. The salt water symbolizes the tears shed during our slavery. There's a beautiful story that came out of the Shoah, out of the Holocaust, where there was a survivor who told the story of how when she was a child she was hidden by a priest. And this priest, a lot of children who were hidden during the Holocaust did not know that they were even Jewish at the end of the war. They were not raised Jewish during the war. This priest actually wanted to raise her in her own tradition. So when Passover came, he wanted to do a Seder with her. Unfortunately, there were not green vegetables. There was very little food at all. And what he did find was a sort of kvetchy carrot. And so he used this kvetchy little carrot and dipped it in salt water. So there are some people who will use, for example, in Eastern Europe, a potato. That was what they had. They used a carrot. So she has kept, she passed away, but she always had a carrot on her Seder plate to remind her of that family, this priest who had hidden her. So if you have or you hear of any stories, you can really use any vegetable that is meaningful to you. For now, we're going to use our karpas, and we're going to say our blessing. So go ahead and hold up your parsley. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri ha'adama. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who brings forth greenery from the land. So you want to make sure it is a vegetable that grows out of the ground. We're going to dip it in the delicious salt water. Yum, yum, yum. Potato. Breaking the middle matzah, yachat. So I have 3 matzot here. And I'm going to take the middle matzah. I'm going to break it. This middle matzah is going to become the afikomen. So all of you kids who are watching, you're going to have to find this very matzah. So it might take you a while to get to Chicago, but my expectation is you're going to find this very matzah. So parents, you're going to have to hide the middle matzah. The Seder cannot end until the afikomen is found and eaten for dessert. So we're going to hide this one for later. Wrap it up in a napkin, and these guys are going to stay out. And I will put them over here. Shh, you didn't see that. It's not hidden behind me. The middle matzah. The middle matzah on a plate is broken in half. 1 half is put with the stack right over here. The other half is placed in a napkin or a special holder and designated as the afikomen, the dessert, and put on the side. It's traditional in some homes to hide the afikomen for children and to find it before it is eaten after the meal, for children to steal the afikomen and hold it ransom. So you can either hide it, or you know where it is, and you have to somehow release it from its prison. So we've done both in our family. So you can choose which way you want to go. Telling of the story. Magid, there is one person who is not named at all in the story of the Exodus from Egypt during Passover. Anybody know whose name that is? Anybody? I can't hear you. It is, I can't say his name. I can't say his name because he's not mentioned during Passover. But you will find out because you will not hear this person's name. There arose in Egypt a Pharaoh who knew not of the good deeds that Joseph had done for that country. Thus he enslaved the Jews and made their lives harsh through servitude and humiliation. This is the basis for the Passover holiday, which we commemorate with these different rituals tonight. The youngest child, or any individual who would like to, is going to ask or sing the 4 questions. It is on your sheet, number 4. And you can go ahead and sing with me. Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halelot, mikol halelot, shebechol halelot anu ochlin chametz u'matzah, chametz u'matzah, halayla zeh kulo matzah, halayla zeh kulo matzah, shebechol halelot anu ochlin she'ayir hakot, she'ayir hakot, halayla zeh shebechol halelot anu matbilin afilu ha'alachat, afilu ha'alachat, halayla zeh sheteh anim, halayla zeh shebechol halelot anu ochlin ein yoshvim u'vein nisuvin, ein yoshvim u'vein nisuvin, halayla zeh halayla zeh Why is this night different from all other nights? On this night, we eat either bread. On all other nights, we eat either bread or matzah. But on this night, we eat only matzah. On all other nights, we eat herbs or vegetables of any kind. On this night, we eat only bitter herbs. On all other nights, we do not dip even once, meaning our vegetables in salt water. On this night, we dip twice. On all other nights, we eat our meals in any manner. On this night, we relax. We sit around in a reclining position. So at this point, if you do not have a pillow or something comfortable to lean against, you can get up and go ahead and grab something comfortable. It can be a couch cushion, it can be a blanket, it could be a stuffed animal or a pillow. Go ahead, get up and grab one and then come back to the table. You can pause this video and grab something comfortable and then bring it back to the table so you can be comfortable and recline. We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and God brought us out with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. And if God had not brought our ancestors out of Egypt, and our children and our children's children would still be subjugated to Pharaoh in Egypt, even if we were old and wise and learned in Torah, we would still be commanded to tell the story of the Exodus from Egypt. And the more we talk about the Exodus from Egypt, the more praiseworthy we are. The 4 children. The Torah describes 4 children who ask questions about the Exodus. Tradition teaches us that these verses refer to 4 different types of children. There's a parallel to Sukkot here. There are 4 festivals that we celebrate. The festival that we have already had is Sukkot. There are 4 different species, and if you remember, on the lulav you have the etrog, which is beautiful smelling, and it also tastes really yummy. Not that I suggest that you take a big chunk out of it, but you can get etrog marmalade and things like that. It also has myrtle and palm and willow leaves. So there is the etrog, which has smell and taste. There is the willow, which has no taste. It also has no smell. It doesn't bear fruit. There's the palm that gives fruit, so it has taste, but it doesn't have any smell. And there is the myrtle, which smells really nice, but it doesn't have any taste. And supposedly that one reason for that is that it represents, according to tradition, it represents the 4 kinds of people there are in the world. There are the people who study Torah and do good deeds. There are the people in the world who do good deeds and don't study Torah. There are the people who do neither, and the people who do both. I think I said that correctly. So there are 4 different kinds of people in the world, and we welcome them all into our sukkah during Sukkot. Here, in this festival, we have 4 different kinds of children. The first kind of child is the wise child. The wise child asks, what are the laws that God has commanded us? The parent should answer by instructing the child in the laws of Passover, starting from the beginning and ending with the laws of the Afikoman. The wicked child asks, what does this Passover service mean to you? Meaning to you. The parent should answer, it is because of what God did for me when I came out of Egypt. Specifically me and not you. If you had been there with your attitude, you wouldn't have been redeemed. I would say that it is both the parent and the child who are a little attitudey in number 2. The simple child asks, what is a Seder service? The parent should answer with a mighty hand, God brought us out of Egypt. Therefore, we commemorate that event tonight through this Seder. And then there's a child who doesn't know how to ask. A parent should begin a discussion with that child based on the verse. And you shall tell your child on that day, we commemorate Passover tonight because of what God did for us when we went out of Egypt. Take a minute. You can pause. Take a minute and talk about what other kinds of people, what other kinds of children could come into this Seder, what other kinds of people are in this Seder that we could invite into the Seder. The telling of the story of Passover continues. While the Jews endured harsh slavery in Egypt, God chose somebody. somebody who should not be named on page 8 and who will not be named in this service. God led the people to freedom. We will not talk about a person. This is a beautiful example. Why wouldn't we name the person that we see on page 8? The fear is that if we talk about a person, there could be confusion as to who did the miracles, who led the people out. Therefore, it is our tradition that we do not talk about any human being doing any of that stuff. It is only God. So we stop. I know everybody loves the song that we see on page 8, so we will sing that song later. But God redeemed us from Egypt. God led us out of Egypt. God brought plagues to Egypt. The emissary that went to initially ask God to let the people go did not cause anything to happen. Therefore, we don't talk about that person. We continue on page 9. Pharaoh hardened his heart and refused to let the Jewish people go, and that is why God sent the 10 plagues. It is our tradition to remove 10 drops of wine from our cups as we recite the 10 plagues as a remembrance that while the Jews were redeemed through these plagues, people did suffer. Everybody take your wine or your juice and take a drop of wine for each plague as you recite its name. Dam, blood. Tzvardea, frogs. Kinim, lice. Arov, beasts. Dever, cattle. Shchin, boils. Barad, hail. Arbe, locusts. Choshech, darkness. Makat bechorot, the slaying of the firstborn. And what I would like you to do now is take a minute and think of 10 good things. And with every one of these 10 good things that you come up with yourself, go ahead and take a sip of wine or juice, just a sip. Following the slaying of the firstborn, Pharaoh allowed the Jewish people to leave. The Jews left Egypt in such haste that their dough did not rise, so they ate matzah. When Pharaoh changed his mind and chased after the Israelites, God miraculously caused the Red Sea to split, allowing the Israelites to cross safely. When the Egyptians entered the sea, it returned to its natural state, and the mighty Egyptian army drowned. Now, for those of you who have done a little bit of Torah study, in fact, we were commanded while we were in Egypt to bake matzah, an unleavened bread. So in fact, it wasn't due to our haste, as it is written in our Haggadot, in many of our Haggadot. We, in fact, were commanded when we were not in a hurry to bake this unleavened bread while we were still in Egypt. So it is this bread of affliction that we eat, but it was not a bread of haste. It is something that reminds us of a time when people were suffering around us, and it was to remember the bitterness of slavery. And this we did have it with us when we left Egypt, but it was not because we left Egypt that we had matzah. In fact, it was something that we made the night before, in fact, we even left Egypt. Fun fact. As the sea split, we went across, and then Miriam sang, but before we get to a little Miriam song, there's a beautiful story about Nachshon. Nachshon, kids, this is a great story for you. It is said that as God was going to make the sea split, it wasn't enough that a leader make the first move to allow the sea to split. That there was something a little bit more that needed to be shown in terms of dedication. And as that emissary sort of got up and is like, don't worry, God is gonna make the sea split, nothing happened. And the people are getting very nervous because there's this huge sea in front of them, and in back of them, the Pharaoh's army is coming very fast, and that window of time is closing. And there was a young boy named Nachshon. And Nachshon is kind of assessing the situation and had a lot of faith in God that it didn't matter, that there's this huge sea and that it was very possible that Nachshon was going to die, but that this faith in God, that God in fact was going to split the sea, and that knowledge, Nachshon just said, I'm gonna just go because God is going to split the sea. So Nachshon takes a step into the water and nothing happens. And Nachshon takes another step up into his knees and nothing happens. And Nachshon said to himself, it's okay, I know the sea is going to split because God is going to do it. And up into his stomach, sea doesn't split, but Nachshon said, it's okay, I know, God's going to split the sea. And ultimately, Nachshon goes into the water up to his chest, up to his neck, up to his mouth, up to his nose, all the while saying, I know that God is going to split the sea. And it was as soon as Nachshon took that last step, took a deep breath, and took the plunge, where it was drown, and that was it. And God split the sea. That it wasn't any emissary, it wasn't some powerful leader that was going to, take that step into the water, that it was really a child, somebody who just had faith, a very simple, I know this is going to happen, and walked into the water. And so it's this beautiful story of Nachshon, somebody like you and me, who just had a very simple faith in God, that I don't need to worry because God is going to make this happen. And that is when God made the sea split, because God saw that just some little Joe Schmo off the street knew it was going to happen and had enough faith to take the plunge, quite literally. And that's the story of Nachshon. So we're going to look on our sheets. Miriam's song is number 9. So when we got to the other side, we started to celebrate, and God was not very happy with our celebrations, because although we went to freedom, other people suffered. But today we can sing a song of celebration because we are celebrating our freedom. Beauty for we conclude telling the story of Passover, we sing a song listing all of the wonderful acts that God performed for the Israelites as they left Egypt. If you want all of the verses, it is number 9, I believe. Number 8 on your song sheet. If God had taken us out of Egypt and not executed judgment upon them, it would have been enough for us. Dayenu. If God had executed judgment upon us and not upon their idols, it would have been enough for us. Dayenu. If God would have judged their idols and not killed their firstborn, it would have been enough for us. Dayenu. If God would have killed their firstborn and not given us their wealth, it would have been enough for us. Dayenu. If God would have given us their wealth and not split the sea for us, it would have been enough for us. Dayenu. If God would have split the sea for us and not let us through it on dry land, it would have been enough for us. Dayenu. If God would have let us through on dry land and not drowned our enemies, it would have been enough for us. Dayenu. If God would have drowned our enemies and not provided for our needs in the desert for 40 years, it would have been enough for us. Go ahead and pause this and think of your own Dayenus. And when you're ready, you can go ahead and open to page 11. We're going to have a look at our Seder plates. First we have the Pesach. Pesach is named for this. Yum, yum. For the angel of death to pass over our homes in Egypt, we had to mark the doorposts with branches, okay? But this was the sacrifice, the sacrificial lamb. In Ashkenazi tradition, you do not eat the shank bone of the animal. In Sephardic traditions, you actually do eat it, which was a big shock for me the first time I went to a Sephardic Seder. The next thing that we have the matzah. We've already talked about the matzah. Okay, we have the maror, which is right there, nice and spicy in the middle. The maror reminds us of the bitterness and the suffering of the Israelites as they were slaves to the Egyptian. We have charoset. The charoset is this delicious apple, and some people make it with nuts, cinnamon, and wine. We have our 2 3 actual springtime. We have the egg and the 2 springtime herbs, which of course are tempered with the tears of slavery. We now conclude the Magid section of the Seder. Tradition teaches us that in every generation, we ought to look upon ourselves as if we personally had gone out of Egypt. Therefore, it is our duty to thank the one who performed all of the miracles for generations past and present. I'm actually going to read that again because this is the most important line of the entire Seder. So I'm actually going to ask you to read it with me on page 11. Tradition teaches us that in every generation we ought to look upon ourselves as if we personally had gone out of Egypt. Therefore, it is our duty to thank the one who performed all the miracles for generations past and present. The Micha Mocha in the service is in fact the most important prayer that we have. We say the Shema, which of course identifies God as our one God. But Micha Mocha is this sort of sums up this little line. Who is like you who performs miracles? Who is like you who set us free from the house of bondage? In every generation, we are supposed to remember that we personally were set out of Egypt. And the Micha Mocha mirrors this paragraph, which is what we are supposed to remember in every generation. We start saying psalms, praising God for taking us out of Egypt. We will continue after we eat our meal, and it's coming, don't worry. Psalm 114, when Israel came forth out of Egypt, the house of Jacob, from a people of strange language, Judah became his sanctuary, Israel his dominion. The sea saw it and fled. The Jordan River turned backwards. The mountains skipped like rams, the hills like young sheep. What ails you, O that sea that you flee, the Jordan River that you turn backwards? You mountains that skip like rams, you hills like young sheep, tremble, earth, at the presence of the Lord, at the presence of the God of Jacob, who turned the rock into a pool of water, the flint into a fountain of waters. A blessing is then said over the second cup of wine. Go ahead and raise your glasses. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who created the fruit of the vine. And we say together, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri hagafen. And you can go ahead and drink your second cup of wine. The second ritual hand washing, you can do the same thing as the first. If you are washing your hands, we're going to say the second, the first blessing over washing our hands, which is Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al netilat yadayim. Amen. Blessing over the Seder meal. You can go ahead and pick up matzah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who brings bread from the earth. Don't eat it yet. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat matzah. You can go ahead and take a bite of your matzah. Now, the fun part. you're going to take some of your maror. Yum, yum, yum. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat maror. Ooh! Whew. Okay. Hillel was amazing and very smart, and obviously did not like maror very much. He was obviously related to me. So he came up with this brilliant idea to take the maror and add it to the yummy charoset. We're going to do that next. This is called the Hillel sandwich. It's like your first hamburger. So, we're going to take our maror. Then we're going to add some yummy apples to it. Okay. And you are going to, each person makes a sandwich using, 2 pieces of matzah, or 1 really large piece of matzah. This is going to get really messy. All right, I'm just going to use 1. You're going to use 2. Each person makes a sandwich using 2 pieces of matzah with maror and charoset, a mixture of nuts, fruit, wine, and spices that symbolize the mortar used by the Jewish people to make bricks while enslaved in Egypt. Who knew bricks were so yummy? This is done in commemoration of an enactment made by the great sage Hillel, who lived in the time of the Second Temple, to eat the Passover sacrifice together with matzah and maror in a sandwich. So after you eat your Hillel sandwich, you can go ahead, pause, and b'te'avon. Eat up. And when you're done with your meal, you can unpause and we will continue. So, welcome back. The piece of matzah, your kids are now going to go and hunt for your afikomen and for your enjoyment. I'm going to sing you a little Elijah song while you guys are hunting. It's the first night of Passover, the Seder table set. My mother tells me there's one thing that we must not forget. She takes a very special glass and fills it with grape juice. I ask if it's for Uncle Jay or maybe Cousin Bruce. She says it's not for any member of our family. It's for someone named Elijah, you see. Sorry, after we've all eaten, then I wonder if there's more. On the same left, my mother tells me open the front door, but I didn't hear the doorbell, so of course I asked her why. She says I think that Elijah will stop by. I say now that I am confused and that I must confess, of the matzah put aside earlier as the afikomen is eaten as a dessert. That song, by the way, is sung way better than for somebody who hasn't sung it in a year. It's by the Macaroons. It's a PJ Library song. So if any of you do not get PJ Library, it is now available in Idaho. And it is a book. This is my little plug for wonderful Jewish stories. It is, you get them for free for kids up into birth to 12. So if you don't get PJ Library, it's a wonderful thing to get. You can sign up online. A piece of matzah is put aside earlier as the afikomen is eaten as a dessert. It is traditional in some homes to hide the afikomen for children to find before eating it, or for children to steal the afikomen and hold it ransom. Children who participate should be rewarded and praised at this point. Barech, the cup of wine is refilled, and Birkat Hamazon, grace after meal, is recited. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who sustains the entire world with goodness, grace, loving kindness, and compassion. God gives bread to all, for God's grace is everlasting. And in God's great goodness we have never lacked anything, and we will never be deprived of food for the sake of God's great name. For God is the one who provides for all and does good for all and prepares food for all. God's creatures, for all of God's creatures that God created. Blessed are you, God, who provides for all. God and God of our ancestors, may you remember us on this day of Passover and bless us with kindness and mercy for a life of peace and happiness. We pray that God, who established peace in the heavens, grant peace for us, for all Israel and all of mankind, and let us say Amen. A blessing over the third cup of wine. Raise your glasses. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. We are now going to drink the third cup of wine, and you are going to welcome Elijah. The fourth and final cup of wine is now filled. An additional cup is then filled and set aside for the prophet Elijah. Tradition tells us that Elijah, who will precede the arrival of the Messiah, makes an appearance at every Seder. We traditionally open the door of the home to allow Elijah to enter and sing the song Eliyahu Hanavi. Elijah the prophet, Elijah the Tishabite, Elijah the Gileadite, may you come speedily in our own days, along with the Messiah, the son of David. Go ahead and open the door. Hallel. Selections from Psalms are recited, confirming our praise for God and redeeming our ancestors from Egypt and God's continuous protection. We're going to do Hallelujah, which is number 11 on your sheets. Hallelujah, 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 Seder has now come to an end. We are going to sing Go Down Moses. So it is on your sheets. Where did I put the sheet? It is on, oh, here it is. It is number 5 on your sheets. It is not number 5. It is number 6. When Israel was in Egypt land, let my people go. Pressed so hard they could not stand. And we conclude on page 17. Oh, blessing over the 4th cup of wine. We raise our glasses. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. We conclude the official part of the Seder with a final prayer, asking God to bring the Messianic era when all of us will be gathered in Jerusalem as all humankind dwells in peace.